Happy Friday, everyone. Hope you all are doing well. As we normally do, we're just giving it a moment or two for our community to get settled into this virtual learning space. I am Dr. Nika White, and my pronouns are she, her. I am the proud founder and lead principal consultant for NWC, and we are delighted to bring you this virtual learning experience week after week, where we learn with and from each other through intentional conversations, where we intersect conversations and dialogue around diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging, all the things DEIB with leadership and business. We have been expecting you as we do every Friday. And so we're so glad that you have decided to spend this hour with us. I would love for you to go to the chat. Let us know where you're joining the conversation from. It's always a treat for us to see the different geographies that are being represented across not only the US, but also across other parts of the country as well. And if you feel inclined to be in touch with this community, even beyond this hour, then I also encourage you to share your LinkedIn information in the chat as well. My team will share my LinkedIn. I certainly desire to connect with any and all of you at any time. And thank you so much for being here. I also want to welcome those of you who are joining us live via LinkedIn. We do not forget about you. We know there's some people that like to get their intentional conversations podcast fix by just scrolling through LinkedIn and then joining the conversation there. So make sure that you stay close to the comment section. We're bringing in a lot of those sentiments into our Zoom community as well, so that we all can be greatly connected. The chat and the comments are a way to keep us proximate to each other throughout this hour of learning with and from each other. Now, at NWC, we really do value disability inclusion. So part of how we like to show up in that regard is to make sure that closed caption is available for those who need it. So I do want to make you aware of that. If you are part of our Zoom community and you would like to have your cameras on, then we do encourage that. We love to see smiling faces, but we also know that many times people are multitasking, or perhaps they just desire to preserve some of their energy and not have their cameras on, and that's totally fine as well. We're glad that you're here in whatever capacity. Once again, if you're just joining us, this is Intentional Conversations VodCast, and we're so glad you're here. Sit back and enjoy the show. Let the conversations begin, and that is precisely what we are about to do. If you're just tuning in, you are joining Intentional Conversations VodCast, where we also do extract the audio and we make it available podcast capacity for those who like to get their content in that way. But we're so glad you're here. We don't take that lightly. One of the things that we often like to do at NWC at the start of our podcast is to share some of the national observances that we want you to be aware of. And now that we're in the month of May, just hitting the top of May, I do want to let you know of some of those national observances. Asian American Pacific Islanders, AAPI, it is their Heritage Month. And so make sure that you're doing all that you can to learn about that community and to support those individuals who are contributing at a high level to our society in so many different ways. Also want you to be aware that May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I cannot stress the importance of us taking really good radical care of our well-being and helping others within our networks, our circles, to do the same. And so make sure that you're doing your part to be mentally strong by seeking help if you need to, making sure you have a sense of community that you can pour into and they can pour into you from a support perspective. And we just want to make sure we keep amplifying this to break the stigma, because mental health is just as important as our physical health. Also, the month of May, I want you to know that Better Hearing and Speech Month is this month as well. And so if you didn't know that, then now you do. And hopefully you will learn a little bit more about ways in which you can support those who benefit from all of the different services and offerings that are available who need better hearing and speech therapy. Now, while we're not in the month of June yet, it is upon us, and I don't want us to have it sneak up on us and then feel like, well, what are we going to do now? It's Juneteenth. And so I want to put into your hearing now, NWC would love to partner with you to curate meaningful experiences around Juneteenth. And so if that's of interest to you, don't wait till the last minute. Contact us. We are booking for June right now, and we would love to be support and co-creating a great learning experience for your organization. If you've been with the podcast for quite some time, you know that I have book number 3 that's been out there for over a year. It is called Inclusion Uncomplicated, a transformative guide to simplify DEI, and that is in partnership with Forbes Books. If you have not ordered your copy, please do order your copy. It is available in hard copy, it's available on audiobook and also on Kindle. And we're soon going to be releasing a paperback, but not just yet. But I want you to just know that I appreciate the support from this community and keep that support coming. Thank you so very much. Now, many of you know that at NWC, we love to provide all of these specially curated resources just to help people deepen their learning and their knowledge and understanding of all things DEI. And one of the ways in which we do that, in addition to this podcast and podcast, is we have a YouTube channel, and every single week we release new content. And it is under the auspices of Inclusion Uncomplicated to align with my book, but it's all about simplifying DEI. The most recent video that we released is about communication strategies. But most importantly, what I want you to know is subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can always be alerted of these new videos that are released. And while they are short clips, maybe no more than like 2 minutes in length, they are punched with a lot of great insight. And so I hope that you will subscribe at Nika White 2015 to our YouTube channel. You can also just scan that QR code on your screen, and we'd love to see you as a part of our YouTube community. Thank you in advance. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of what you have to look forward to this month of May, as we're going to be welcoming some tremendous guest co-hosts to join us for Intentional Conversations. And I'm so excited because we have Desiree B. Stevens, who's going to be joining us next Friday on May 10th. And in that discussion, we're going to talk about the anti-DEI movement, something that's top of mind for so many of us, and healing in the space of any racism work. So I look forward to that conversation. I hope that you will join us on that particular Friday. Then following on Friday, May 17th, we have Amber Ontiveros, who's going to be joining us. And we're going to talk about the cause of oppression, the 4 woundings, and she'll unpack exactly what that is, and the tools we can implement to affect society. So I hope that you will join Amber and I for that conversation in mid-May. And then following that, listen, I told you this last week, I'm going to let you in on it now. If you do not follow Paul Ladipo, you need to follow him now. His content is a scroll stopper. I never, ever, ever just keep scrolling when I see Paul's content out there. And you will soon find out why if you join us on May the 24th. And so in that conversation, we're going to be talking about the origins of anti-DEI movement, 21st century racism, what he refers to as nice racism that we all need to be aware of, and butchering the term woke. Right? So it's going to be a really riveting conversation, I have no doubt. And then closing us out the month of May, we have Casey Ariel Tobias. And in that intentional conversation, we're going to talk about the state of Black women-owned businesses, the legal landscape around DEI, but specifically its implications on all race-based initiatives that aim to close access gaps and pathways to financial activism and social entrepreneurship. So join us at the end of May for that conversation with Casey Ariel Tobias. Now, if you've been part of our podcast community, you know that before I bring on our guest co-host, I always read their official bio because it's so important to me for you all to know the accolades, the credentials in which our guest co-hosts show up to the conversation with. And so today will be no different. I am so delighted to invite Julia Rock to be my guest co-host today. And here is Julia's bio. Julia C. Rock is an employment expert and career coach who is passionate about transforming workplace dynamics to create collective success between organizations and their employees. As a former senior finance leader in the oil and gas sector who has managed and scaled global teams, Julia has personally overcome workplace burnout, disengagement, and inequality to coach and empower 1,000 plus employees to build meaningful careers. She has been featured in several major publications and platforms, including Fortune, Business Insider, and Exo Nicole. Julia is a keynote speaker, presenter, workshop facilitator who not only captivates and engages her audience, but also spurs them to action. With years of experience in speaking to both corporate and community audiences, she is skilled in connecting with groups from all walks of life. Some of her past speaking credits include notable platforms such as TEDx, National Urban League, Women Impact Tech, and Tech Ladies, amongst various others organizations and universities. Julia is a certified professional resume writer, CPRW, if you didn't know that that acronym stood for, and certified employment interview professional, CEIP. She is also a published author, co-authoring 2 books focused on helping athletes to achieve career success after sports. Title: The Six-Figure Athlete and Athlete to Entrepreneur, Volume Number 2. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can bring Julia into the spotlight. And as I do that, I'm going to invite each of you to take a moment with me to show appreciation to Julia for being here with us today. So find those emojis, find those reactions, find those accolades, those words of affirmation, whatever it is. But let's let Julia know how grateful we are to have her here today. Thank you so much, Julia. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We don't take it lightly when people say yes to our invitation and when they are willing to share with our community. So we are so grateful and cannot wait to just jump right in. So let's do that right now. And I want to give you a chance to greet this audience in your own way. But I will tell you that tradition here is that we do ask our guest co-hosts to, as they are greeting the audience, to also maybe share something with us that we would not know from reading your bio, which we just did, or from maybe looking at your LinkedIn profile. So welcome, Julia. So glad you're here.
Thank you, Nika. I really appreciate being here. And hello, everyone. I'm excited to be part of this conversation today and just be amongst you to have an amazing conversation. I'm really just energized, as you probably can tell from here. I'm not going to go back through my whole bio. Thank you, Nika, for sharing all of that detail. It's always fun to hear your bio read. But I'll just say that I'm someone who is passionate about seeing people transform their lives professionally. I'm not called to be a life coach. I know that's not my ministry, but I know that when people change their professional careers and they have those opportunities, their entire life changes. And so I'm passionate about leading that charge. I will say something that you may not know about me is that I'm a sneakerhead. So not sure if there's any sneaker enthusiasts that are on the line that would love to share that in the chat, but I have several, I'll just leave it at several pairs of sneakers. Now that I'm no longer in corporate, I have the opportunity to wear them more often. And then the last thing I'll say is that I'm a 9-to-5 evangelist. And people are like, well, what does 9-to-5 evangelist mean? And what I mean by that is I think that there's the proliferation of the idea that everyone has to be an entrepreneur. And I just don't believe that. You can have a thriving life, career that's meaningful, even if you're working for someone else. You don't have to feel that pressure. And so I preach from the 9-to-5 pulpit that you can live your best life, even if you're working a 9-to-5.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I appreciate you sharing that. I do know of a number of entrepreneurs who are such proud entrepreneurs that maybe when they post and they talk about their entrepreneurial journey, it causes others to feel like that is the only way. And so I'm glad that you're kind of amplifying that. No, we each have to find our own lane. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with, the 9-to-5. Yes. I say that entrepreneurship, it takes a certain type of person and personality. And if that's not for you, then that's not for you, and that's completely okay. So thank you for bringing that to the conversation. And I love that you shared that you're a sneakerhead. I am not a sneakerhead, but I will tell you that in my older years, I have grown to appreciate my sneakers, especially after the pandemic, a lot more. And I do not deny myself of taking sneakers onto the stage when I have to speak. So it's kind of become a part of my wardrobe these days. I don't know if it's like just getting older or just kind of being accustomed to the comfort that we all were able to, kind of lean into throughout the pandemic. But nonetheless, thanks for sharing those interesting facts about yourself.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so let's jump right in. I did kind of give an overview of your career path and your journey, but I want to dig very specifically into your experience working with global teams. So, someone who has managed and scaled global teams, Julia, what are some of the key insights that you've gained about employee engagement and retention that you feel is really important to socialize with this community?
Man, I'll just say that, what I've learned could fill a library. But I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. But One of the major keys to employee engagement and retention, it starts with the talent acquisition and the hiring process. Too often we're
Mm,
trying to fix the problem after people get there, but we
yeah,
didn't do the appropriate vetting up front to understand, are these people even a fit for our organization? Do they have the
yeah,
skill set? Do they have the interest in the work? And what's the environment like that you're setting up for these folks who are coming in? And then what are you actually offering these employees? From a compensation, from a benefit standpoint, what's the package that you're providing? Because even though you have all these things happening in your organization, your people are your greatest asset. And when we look at our personal lives, we take care of our assets, our car, we wash it, we make sure there's oil in it, we take care of our homes and so forth. But when we have employees in an organization that are supposed to be an asset, we expect them to just take whatever we give them, and we're not really taking good care of them. And then we wonder why they're leaving. We wonder why they're disengaged. And so really
yeah.
flipping that mindset around, these are our assets and we need to take better care of them. And
I
then
love
thinking
that.
and then and one of the things that I have realized is that we have these policies that we put in the organizations, and we're not realizing, how is this actually going to impact the individual? It sounds good on paper, right? Everybody back to the office 5 days a week, right? And then it's like, but is that really a fit for anyone at this stage post pandemic? Probably not, you know.
Yeah.
And I did want to add just one other thing around that is, for when it comes to employee engagement, you also have to think about, are you providing meaningful work? Is there purpose in the work? People are no longer in a space of, I'm just going to go to work and get a paycheck, right? They want to be able to say, am I doing work that adds value? Am I going to see the results somewhere? Who is this impacting? What value is this providing to society? And so when you're bringing people in, are you able to tie those points to say, hey, this work that you're doing, this is what the result of it's going to be. This is how it helps. This is how it drives our business forward. So those are just a few of the insights. And I mean, leadership is a whole other section that we can get into for sure, because the key to employee engagement and retention is really around leadership as well.
I totally agree with you, Julia. You said a few things I just want to amplify and lean into for a quick second. The first thing is just overall, what you're sharing really is the significance of ensuring alignment during the phase in which you're courting different talent before you make that decision. And so, do you believe that we are a society where we rush to hiring decisions without fully vetting the candidates across all the things? And when I say all the things, not just the qualifications, I mean, obviously that's number one, but then you also mentioned fit, and I'm going to use the word alignment. And I would say alignment from the perspective of, do they align with our core values? Do they align with, some of our policies? Could they align with our policies that we have in place? Or is there a connection point to our purpose and our mission, right, that allows them to feel like they can thrive in that environment? And so I just want to get you to comment on, do you think that there is merit into helping people slow down within that talent acquisition process, in order to help create greater alignment of talent within the workplaces?
So I don't know if the word is slow down, because I feel like a lot of organizations have now created these performative interview processes where
Oh
you've got
yeah,
10
very lengthy.
interviews, and it's like, what did you know? What are you hearing by interview 10 that you didn't hear by interview 3? I mean, it's just
Yeah,
it's ridiculous. So I don't know if it's slowing down, but really optimizing, what are we actually
yeah,
testing in the interview process? Sure, you're testing the skills and the subject matter knowledge, and can they make this widget? Okay, fine. But are you testing that, hey, this is the values, and this is what our organization stands for. This is what we're
yeah.
doing. Is this alignment with what your values are? And the answer is either yes or no. And so I think we need to shift the focus in the interviews and optimize the conversations versus just trying to drag it out and ask people to keep having conversations and interviews that are really not really driving to a better result.
Yeah, yeah, very well stated. I like the use of the word optimize there, because you're right. Sometimes we do hear a lot of complaints by job seekers. They're saying, "Why am I continuing to be brought in at interview after interview after interview?" And people are saying the same thing, and then I get ghosted, right? And so, yes, optimize to try to ensure that alignment, but don't necessarily drag the process out, which is very unfair to those who are the job seekers. So let's talk about leadership. You said there's a lot more that I could say about leadership, so
Oh,
we're going to
yeah.
go ahead and jump there, Julia. Okay, so how do you approach approach leadership development in your coaching practice? And what are some of the key qualities that you emphasize as you're working with those clients?
Absolutely. So when it comes to leadership development, I do an assessment, one
Mhm.
on where they are in their leadership journey, because what a first-time leader needs is very different than what someone who's more seasoned and who's getting a greater scope of responsibility would need versus an executive.
Sure.
There are different levels there. And I think about my own experiences when I was a supervisor in Baton Rouge with one team, and then I moved to Argentina, and then and when I became a more senior leader, and I had a team of 70 plus people at different levels that were reporting to me. What I needed in those leadership moments were very different. So that's part of the assessment. One of the other things that we don't talk enough about is, do you even want to be on the leadership ladder? Right? Because people are getting put into leadership roles because they have good technical expertise or subject matter knowledge, or they've just been there a while and it's time, quote unquote. And so part of what I also try to suss out from my clients is, how do you feel about even being part of this leadership ladder? How do you feel about having to develop people and having that level of responsibility to provide
Yeah.
support and listen and be empathetic? And for some of them, it's like, I don't even really know if that's if it's my jam,
Right.
right? And so it's having that
Right.
discussion. And so some of the qualities that I try to emphasize in those discussions is, one, having integrity. The fact is, people cannot trust or support a leader that seems like they're not willing to do the right thing when it matters. It's
Of
okay
course.
to do the right thing when it's sexy, but can you do the right thing when
That
you're
matters.
facing opposition? And following up to that, are you being authentic and genuine? Right? People can't
Mhm.
relate to you if you seem like you're just kind of towing the party line and they can't really see the real you. They're not going to be willing
Yeah.
to bring anything forward. And then one of the last things I'll mention is courage. Do you have the courage to stand up and advocate on behalf of your people? And
Yeah.
I'll give you one of my scenarios that I call pass along syndrome, where
Mhm.
you as a manager, you get some ridiculous request from upline because someone just wants to see something or they just want to hear something. There's no context, there's no expectation or understanding as to what it will do to your people. And instead of you asking more questions, you just simply pass it along to your team,
Mm.
to their plate, versus
Mm.
being a stronger leader and saying, hey, why do you need this? My team is already stretched. We already have these objectives in place. Why do you need this? And is there an opportunity for us to simplify it, get it to you later, something? So courage, authenticity, integrity, those are so important for leadership.
That is a great example that you shared. And I think that it helps us to make it practical when we talk about what does true advocacy of your people look like, right, in the workplace. Because as you were sharing that scenario, I thought to myself, I can probably name, several examples of situations like that where it's just like, okay, I just want to kind of satisfy what we've been told to do. So just go do the busy work and then we won't even like make it an issue, right? So I love that you're making it practical for us. And I also think that when we talk about leadership, you mentioned that sometimes people end up in those leadership roles because they are good at their craft or at their discipline, at their job. And so, really, what the organization is seeking is more of a manager of process and not so much of a leader of people. And the training for those two pathways are vastly different. And so, the same way that you said at the beginning, not everybody is like born to be entrepreneur. It's okay to, have the 9 to 5 and really lean into that and be incredibly successful. I think the same holds true for someone who is self-aware enough to know really care to be in a leadership position and what all that entails. I know of a lot of people that have said to me, I don't like the process of kind of managing people. I want to do my job. I'm good at my job. I want to be able to put my head down and do my job, and that's it. But the management of other people and the leading and mentoring and coaching other people, this is my jam. And I think that's okay too. And we need to be okay with making that statement if that's our situation. So thank you for bringing that to the
And
discussion.
And if I can add one more thing there,
Yes.
I think people don't realize the responsibility that they have when they step into a leadership role. It's nice to
Yeah.
have the title of senior manager, VP, direct. It's nice to have those titles, but you have people's livelihoods in your hand.
Yeah.
You can impact their mental health. You can impact how they feel about themselves. you have a lot of responsibility in a leadership role. And so when you're thinking about, hey, is this really my jam? It's not just about, hey, do I like managing people? It's like, am I okay having the level of responsibility that's required to lead people?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Great questions for us to interrogate ourselves around. So, what advice do you have, Julia, for individuals? This is like graduation season. So, there's a lot of folks who are entering into the marketplace for the first time as professionals. This is top of mind for me because my son graduates from college tomorrow. So, anyway, but I know that this is a very transitional time for a lot of people. Also, because of what we're seeing that's happening in the marketplace for those who've been employed for quite some time. Many people have been displaced. Many people are finding that they're being forced to return to the office and that's not what they want. So they're looking for other opportunities. So, what advice do you have for individuals to seek, develop, navigate, and advance their careers in today's competitive job market?
Well, there are a few different things that I would share. The very first one is that if you're someone who's been displaced, or if you're still, or you're transitioning out between roles, continue to learn and upskill. And,
Yeah.
as the old saying, as, adding tools to the tool belt, some of us may have heard
Hmm.
that before. But there's so many free or low cost tools that are available out there, from Ivy League universities to Coursera to Udemy. There's so much out there available so that you can continue to make yourself competitive. There are a lot of great people with a lot of great skills that are being placed into the market right now. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
a competitive place to be. So you having those skills makes you more marketable. And we'll probably talk about this later, but also networking,
Oh,
getting
yeah.
and getting your network in order, building connections and maintaining those connections. It can't just be you meet someone some place one time and that's all it is. It's really nurturing those connections. And then also finding your community and your support system. Do you have any mentors, people who can provide you with guidance or insight? Do you have, people who are peers that can provide you some perspective, especially if you're trying to
Right.
shift, or even if you're someone new who's joining the workforce? You may have had people who graduated before you who can say, hey, listen, this is what I encountered. You may want to do this. You may want to skip this step. You may want to do this earlier. And then one of the last two things I'll say is being open to non-traditional and even sometimes undesirable assignments. So hear me out on this. Hear me out. One of the things that I have seen in my own career is that when I have been most open within an organization, when I've been most open to saying, hey, no one really wants to do that, I'm willing to try that out. That has been something that has been able to give
Mhm.
me some opportunity, because people are like, oh, well, how is she going to do it? Is she going to get it done? And being able to get those kinds of eyes on you. If you're in the job
Mhm.
search, being willing to have those non-traditional opportunities, it can show additional skills, additional, things that you may have been able to learn and value you could bring to an organization. And then the last thing I'll mention is get help if you can't afford it. Trying to
Yeah.
navigate in this space is difficult. And people will say, well, do I really want to make that investment? But I ask this question: would you prefer to walk through a forest by yourself, blindfolded in the dark?
Yeah.
Or would you rather walk through with your eyes wide open with a guide who can actually take you directly through that path? When you put it that way, it's kind of a no-brainer. So if you can get help from a professional coach, I'm not even plugging myself, it's just thinking about what's out there to make this journey easier for you.
Yeah, no, those are really great tips for those who are looking within a very competitive job market. And what comes up for me right now as someone that's in the space of DEI is I know that there are a lot of practitioners who are leaving the space for, I mean, to each his own, everyone's personal decision. They have to take inventory of their own emotional capacity and their well-being and make decisions that are best for them. But there are a lot of individuals who are shifting from careers into other roles. And so, is there anything in addition to what you've shared around networking and taking on maybe the projects that most people don't want, that you would say is more directly connected to those who are looking to switch industries or roles instead of just finding an opportunity because maybe they're just a recent graduate?
Yeah, so when it comes to actually making a transition, especially if you're switching industries, the big thing is to really take time to assess your transferable skills. What can you
Yeah.
take from here to there? And it's not just understanding what those transferable skills are, but being able to articulate them in a way that the new industry will understand. So for
Yeah.
example, if you're shifting from, let's say, sales into project management, for example, how are you able to tie the skills of being able to negotiate, being able to find new clients, being able to do et cetera, how do you translate that into project management where you're also managing client interfaces and
Yeah.
having to get people on board, corralling them around a solution? And so thinking about those transferable skills and being able to articulate them in the context of your new role is important. And then also taking time to create what I call an attractive brand, especially if you're
Yeah.
switching, industries. People may know you for that one thing if you were the salesperson and everybody knew you for that, that's what they're going to remember you for. But if you're switching, it's like, how do you create a new brand now that represents who you are, the value that you now want to bring to the marketplace? And then also just don't underestimate the power of talking to people, getting outside and talking to people, especially if
Yeah.
they've made a similar transition. So it's not just networking for the sake of networking, but can you identify people who have made the same or similar transitions to understand what roadblocks they may have encountered, what solutions they found over time, so that maybe you can find them sooner. And then lastly, I'll just say, being flexible. It may be that you may want to transition into the industry at a particular level, and I'm not saying you have to go all the way back to the bottom,
Yeah.
but being open to, do I have to take a kind of a role that's off to the side to get me in the door, and then I can outperform and get to where I want to be? Being open and flexible so that you can at least have better, more robust conversations about your movement.
Really sage advice, being agile, open, flexible, learning from others, having a strong brand. Some of us do not think about how important those personal brands are, but they are important. You have one, whether or not you have designed it yourself. People do think and perceive you in a certain way. And then, of course, leveraging all those transferable skills. That's great. So, when I read your bio, I talked about the fact that you have your own experiences with workplace burnout, disengagement, and inequality that's been influenced through your past work experiences. So, I want you to share with us, how has those personal experiences influenced your approach to coaching and empowering others?
Yeah, I mean, I'll put it this way. It gives me more ammunition as to for them to understand what happens when you're in an unhealthy environment. It's one thing to hear the theory and read the Gallup articles, right? It's
Yeah.
another thing to have your coach articulate in great detail, what can happen if you stay in environments that are unhealthy. They're able to better recognize patterns within themselves as well as others. There's also a greater focus on career vision and values, because for
Yeah.
me, when you're in those kinds of environments, you lose sight of what's important to you because you're just trying to
Yeah.
survive every day, right? And so being able to have that more upfront focus on what's important to me, what are my non-negotiables, because that gives you a sense of power in your career journey where you're saying, hey, I'm just not going to stand for this because it's going against my goals, my values. And then also, it's just giving them tools to better advocate on their own behalves and being able to speak up when something's uncomfortable versus just allowing things to simmer. What can happen before you get to burnout is that you're experiencing all these things, and you're just letting them hit you, and they continue to fester and simmer within your spirit, and then it continues to disengage you, detach you, and keeps you unmotivated. So knowing how to advocate for yourself, being willing to speak up and talk to your boss, talk to your boss's boss, talk to whoever you have to make sure that you're not suffering in silence.
Don't suffer in silence. An important message to amplify during Mental Health Awareness Month as well. I often say, as we were thinking about, as you were reflecting on your personal experience with workplace burnout, disengagement, and inequality, we have to take inventory for ourselves of what can we do, what can't we do, and what won't we do. And I think that if we pause to really reflect on those three things, it helps to ground and center us when we're having to make decisions about different employment opportunities or different promotions, or even if it's a lateral movement within an organization. Be very mindful to really and reflect on those three questions: what can we do, what can't we do, and what won't I do, right?
Yes.
Okay, so
Can
I'm going to
I,
give
can
the
I add one more
audience.
thing right there?
Of course you can, Julia, go for it.
So to your point of what can we do, what can't we do, what won't we do? What's really important for all of us to remember is that the companies are not doing us a favor by us being employed there. We are
Yeah,
exchanging services and value for compensation. And
right.
so we're bringing a lot to the table. And so we should feel empowered in this situation to say, hey, this is just not something I'm going to do. Again, they're not doing you a favor. It's not charity by having you there. You can take control of that conversation and say, hey, this is outside of what I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, I so appreciate you interjecting that. And so I want to stay here for a moment because I think we need to unpack that a bit further. What I'm hearing is that there is merit in this paradigm shift, this mindset shift of the employee as it relates to their relationship with the employer. I think that most people do view that relationship as, the power resting solely with the employer, to
Mhm.
where we succumb to whatever kind of the desires, the ask, without really questioning it. And what I'm hearing that you say is that the employee has a lot of power as well. And maybe there's an imbalance right now into how in which we view those relationships. So for someone who is of the mindset that, yeah, my employer, I'm a resource to my employer. And so, human resources, right? Um, how do you get them to overcome that mindset in order to be able to take more agency and saying no and standing firm and advocating for themselves?
So the first thing I'll say is think about any organization. If everyone walks out of the door, what happens? The business shuts
Yeah.
down. And
Yeah.
so you have to think about it in that context. A company cannot exist without employees. And companies cannot do well without employees that are productive, engaged, and motivated. So there's a lot of power that resides with the employee to make or break an organization. And so,
Yeah.
and thinking about the context of, hey, I'm bringing all of this value, this education, these years of experience, these accomplishments, these certifications, all of this knowledge, I'm bringing to make this organization more money. If I take it elsewhere, that's all, they're losing all of the income, all the profit, all the things that I could have generated for them because they choose not to treat me well. And so knowing that about yourself and knowing the value that you bring to the table allows you to have more confident conversations and being able to speak up, because they're not doing you a favor. It's like, you're getting more out of me because, again, I'm working 40 hours, and especially if you're salaried, sometimes they're able to get more than 40 hours worth
Yeah.
of value from you. And so it's kind of changing and thinking about, what is it that I'm bringing to them versus what they're offering me outside of a paycheck and compensation. So it has to be a balance.
Yeah, it has to be a balance. And to me, I think that the amplification needs to be on the internal work. We have to feel
Absolutely.
confident in what we are worth and what we can offer and what we can contribute, because without that, then we are going to see the employers always having the upper hand. And the reality is that there's a lot of fear these days because, a lot of employers are doing things like, and we've seen this in the media, to where one day, an employee passes away, and then the next day the job is already kind of reposted, and there's not really any kind of conversation around it. So there is some persuasion that people perceive that employees are just disposable. And what you're saying is that no, they're not. We need to help employees to realize that too. And I do appreciate the point about the institutional knowledge. Folks are not wanting to pay someone to leave, to hire someone that has to then learn all of those years of that institutional knowledge that really has helped them to be productive. And so I think there's a lot to be said for creating greater balance around the relationship between employees and employers. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, as I was starting to share a moment ago, we are going to shift to give our audience an opportunity to ask questions or share comments regarding our topic today, and to engage live with our guest co-host if you desire. If you're part of the Zoom community and you want to present a question or comment, please use the raise hand feature. That lets us know that you're willing for us to invite you to be unmuted and to add it to the spotlight. If you're on LinkedIn Live and that's how you're joining the conversation today, then you can share your question by placing it into the comments, and my team is watching that. We're bringing it over here to our Zoom community. And last but not least, if you are just someone who wants your question presented on your behalf, go to the chat, go to the comments. We will take those as time permits. I'm going to give you some moments to kind of percolate on what curiosities could be coming up for you while I go to my next question for Julia.
Yes.
And Julia, I want to talk about you have co-authored two books focused on helping athletes achieve career success after sports. And so I would love for you to share maybe some of the principles in those books. What was the impetus that led you to want to write those books? I don't know if you're an athlete yourself, past athlete or current athlete, so we would love to know those tidbits about you. And how can this book also maybe apply to those who are not athletes?
Absolutely. So I'll lead with this. I have no athletic ability. God kind of just said, hard pass. You can read books and do well in school, but athletics is just not for you. I stumble over air. But when it comes to the books, I really was someone who started to help athletes with their career transitions after sports. And that really got me engaged with, hey, how can I also help even more athletes that may not be in my client base? And so I wanted to help co-author these books. But I will say that the principles that I included were around networking as well as mentorship. And the fact that especially for athletes, they have a built-in network, but even for
Yeah,
professionals, you have a built-in network with the people who are around you, people who you go to church with, your sorority, fraternity. You have so many people that you haven't even tapped into yet. And we're always like, well, I don't want to bother. I don't really want to say anything. I don't want to be a nuisance. But
yeah,
when it comes to your career goals, you've got to be willing to speak up. And you can always see how you can reciprocate when you're networking. Like, hey, it doesn't just always
of
have to be you
course.
asking, but you can
Right.
always, say, hey, how can I help you? And then I also talk about the importance of mentorship. And I think that, sometimes mentorship can get a certain rap because like, well, suppose I don't have a mentor or I was able to do this on myself by myself and it's a badge of honor. But the truth is, people who are in mentorship roles for you, they may have walked this path and they can tell you where the landmines are. And they can also
Mm,
just be a source of encouragement to tell you, hey, it does get better.
right.
Things do change. Here's how you can advocate for yourself. And I will just say personally, I think about the dark moments in my career. When I was going through the burnout and the disengagement and my mental health was impacted. I'm very grateful for the executives that I had as mentors who were willing to sit and listen to me and provide
Yeah.
me sage advice, because it's one thing to go to your mama and your friends, right? Because it's like they're
Sure.
going to cheer you on no matter what. But people who can cheer you on but also give you practical advice in the space that you're in is truly invaluable. And then the last thing I shared in the book was about money management, and that's in the
Ooh, yeah.
athlete to entrepreneur book. But I mean, it goes for professionals as well, is that as we go up in salary, right, we're here, spending all the money, and then we're lacking in retirement, we're lacking in the ability to buy property and all of these things. So how can you make sure that you're making the best use of the income you have to provide wealth for your family and future generations?
I love it. Really, really good tips there that are practical for people. So we have referenced actually in this conversation so far, mental health multiple times. So I think it's appropriate for us to tap into that for a quick second because I'm not seeing any hands raised just so far. So I'm going to keep letting people percolate. But what are the the mental health implications to someone staying in a career that no longer serves them, that no longer resonates with them, that maybe is a toxic environment? What are those mental health implications?
Man, there are several, and I'll just think back to my own personal experience of anxiety. Your anxiety
Yeah.
is, and that the World Health Organization talks about that as when it comes to mental health and impact on the global economy. Anxiety because you no longer feel settled in the space and
Right.
you're on edge. Your stress level goes through the roof, and then there's the chance for you to become depressed, and that was really where I got to. Was it was beyond anxiety and stress, was actually getting to a point of depression. And that seeps into every area of your life because you question your worth, you question your value, and you're thinking about your family and your friends, and it's like, I don't even feel valuable to them anymore, all because of what's happening in a career that's maybe a toxic environment, or you're not being treated well. And so if I could leave any words at all, if you didn't listen to anything that I've shared, please take care of your mental health. If you're in an environment where you're not being treated well and it's impacting, being willing to speak up, being willing to exit the environment, willing to transition to a different role or a department, but please prioritize your mental health. You can always get another job. There's only one of you. You are the only copy. So please prioritize your mental health.
Yeah, 100%. So totally worthwhile amplifying during this month of mental health awareness and stress related illnesses. They are real. So if you
Yeah.
think it can't catch you, then you're not being really true to yourself, because yes, we definitely all need to be leaning into that radical self-care about our well-being. So I want to talk about your TEDx. You've done a lot of speaking engagements, and I spoke to some of those platforms actually in those organizations when I was reading your bio. But maybe share a little bit about your TEDx and some key areas that you often find centering a lot of your talks around. And what are you most passionate about when you are on those stages engaging with your audience?
Sure. So I'm just so grateful to have had the TEDx opportunity and being able to share my message with such a broad platform. But one of the key areas, and we've touched on this a little bit during our conversation, is around the internal work. We can't
Yeah.
always control the environment around us, but we can
Mm,
choose how we want to respond and how we want to engage with that environment. And so one of the key or two of the key principles I talk about in the TEDx are the trauma that impacts us internally, as well as our own loss of identity. And so taking some time to do that internal work, it makes such a difference. And so thinking about the things that I talk about on stage, employee engagement and leadership, all of that can tie back to internal work. Are we doing the internal
yeah.
work that we need to show up as our best selves every day? Because again, we can't control always who's around us, but how are we showing up every day? Are we checking in with ourselves? Are we unpacking the things that we need to unpack? Because if you're hopping from job to job and
Right.
you haven't dealt with the issues, you're just taking the same baggage to every job. And so it's taking that time to unpack that. And so when I think about, what's coming up for me in some of the upcoming engagements, I'm doing a lot on leadership, but it's also talking about, are you bringing baggage into your leadership role? Are there things that you
Yeah.
didn't unpack from when you were an associate or analyst or first line lead that you're bringing into the leadership role? And so you're using archaic ways to lead and processes because it's what you know, and that's how you earned your stripes. So really trying to unpack and do the internal work so that the external work and results are going to be a lot better.
That is so profound. And I do believe that there are a number of people that instead of really trying to address it directly and find ways to work through it, they will just plan their exit strategy because maybe they feel like they want to protect their peace, is what I often hear. I don't want to have to go through the conflict of having someone gaslight me and tell me that my experience is not real and that I'm making things up. And so it becomes really, really difficult when you find yourself in that situation, because I'm hearing you say the importance of you have to somehow find a way to work through that and heal, because otherwise, even if you do separate from that organization, you are carrying a lot of those unhealed wounds into the next place in space. And then we're just creating now this domino effect. And so for someone who's in that predicament, what kind of advice do you give to them? I mean, is this really kind of an individualized decision and we have to weigh it for themselves? Or what else could they do to get that healing if they aren't able to get it directly within the confines of that organization?
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is going back to something I said earlier around getting help, right? In this context, whether it's talking to a professional counselor, a therapist, a trusted
Yeah,
advisor, someone that's an objective party, because again, talking to your mama and her friends is only
yeah,
going to take you but so far. But it's really about someone who can hold the mirror up to you in a loving way, so that you can have a discussion and an objective discussion about, hey, this is where things are. And then the other thing that I have found is actually taking time for self-reflection and journaling. I'm someone who
yeah.
likes to write, and sometimes I just sit with a pen and paper and I'm furiously just trying to get it out on paper, because we've got this stuff just it's bottled up and it's flowing through our veins, right? And it's like, how do we get this out of our system? How do we expel this? And at certain points, being able to write it down will help. And then finding a group of people who may have had similar experiences, call
Yeah.
it a support group, or an A, almost like
Community.
an
Yeah.
AA, right? But you think about, there's so much conversation about people getting into corporate roles and then exec. And then there's
Yeah.
nothing in between for, how about all of us that are climbing up the mountain and having all of these challenges? Who's there for us? And so trying to find your tribe of people can also be a safer space for you to share what you're feeling, share like experiences, and maybe get some ideas as to how to also work through it. So there has to be personal work, but also getting those external, those spaces for help and support and safety can really make a difference.
Yeah, community is so important. No one gets to where they are on their own. We're not meant to operate in isolation. And so I think that is really key. And so I appreciate you giving some insight into that. I want to talk about an upcoming event that you have. It's a LinkedIn Live session that's hosted by the Council for Corporate Transformation. You're a part of it. So tell us a little bit about it and what people can expect and how can folks be a part of it.
Yes, I'm excited to talk about this one because the conversation is around impact beyond buzzwords. So how do you really
Yeah,
measure progress when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I know that that term is a dirty word now, unfortunately, but there are organizations that are still seeking to make strides. And there's
of
some that
course.
are trying to make strides. And so how do we make
Yes.
sure that it's beyond performative and
Mhm.
it's actually something that's moving the needle? And so we're actually going to get into, how do you go about doing that? What does accountability look like? Because what we find is many of these organizations, they may put programs in place, but there's no accountability. Whose head rolls if this does not work
Yeah,
out, right? And so
right.
so thinking about all of those things, we're going to get into that, do a deep dive on how do you measure progress so that you can see, where do we have to change course, or do we have to completely get off this course and do something entirely different? And how do we celebrate the things that are going well? It doesn't always have to be bad, right? It's like, how do we celebrate the things that are
Right.
going well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So give us the date of that, the
It's
LinkedIn
so
Live
it's
session,
Yes, so it's May 9th,
May
and
9th.
it's going to be 7 p.m. Eastern time.
Eastern time. Okay, great. And again, that is hosted by the Council for Corporate Transformation. If we're able to kind of source that and place it into the link, we definitely will do so. The chat has some other links for you as well. It has Julia's TEDx, it has information for her books. And so definitely make sure you're paying attention to what's being shared into the chat. Okay, so you also have another event that's coming up that I want to give you the platform to talk about. And you're equally excited about this one as well, because we chatted before the top of the hour.
Yes.
So let us know.
So this one that's coming up is one that's going to be with the National Urban League, their Digital Career Success Series, and we'll be talking about mindfulness and productivity. So this is really important for the
Yeah.
month of May, with mental health and being present in the moment and how that can actually transform our productivity. So you'll have to monitor the National Urban League page over the next couple of days because they're going to post the link there. But I think we focus on just trying to get through things and the hustle and bustle, and we
Right.
don't realize that kind of sitting still and being present in the moment will allow us to deliver more and produce more versus just trying to
Yeah.
go to the next thing and kind of power through.
Right. And for those of you familiar with the NAP ministry, you know, that's what they preach every single day. You need to rest and slow down. And resting is being incredibly productive. And so I appreciate that the National Urban League is providing a space and place for people to share and socialize around that topic, because I think it's really critical for each of us. So, you know, we have just a few moments left, but I want to give this audience a bit more insight into kind of the coaching world. Right now, it seems apparent that there are so many different types of coaches and people that are becoming coaches, to where it can be a little overwhelming for people. And so, Julia, I would love for you to talk about what are some of the primary benefits of having a coach, and what should people think about and consider as they're trying to align with the coach that's going to be the best suited for them. What advice do you give in that regard?
Absolutely. So when it comes to coaching, you're looking for someone that is going to walk alongside you, not do it for you, right? So
Yeah,
you have to come in saying, hey, I want someone who can help guide me, but they're not just going to give me the answer. If the person's willing to give you the answer, they're not trying to coach you. So that's
right.
something to vet as well. And then also looking at their experience. what have they done, and what's their approach to coaching you. So for me, when I do career transition work, I'm not just skipping to the resume and saying, hey, this is where you want to go. We go all the way back to career clarity and mindset and mental wellness, because that's truly the foundation for you to be successful in your career. So it's really understanding what their approach is. But when you think about the benefits of having a coach, I mean, I feel like I'm going to get preachy here, but it's really about being able to see beyond your own see beyond your nose. That's the way that I say it, is that helping you to
Yeah.
see beyond your nose, because you only know what you know, right? And if this is your first time walking this path, or you're finding some difficulty, you have mental roadblocks, you can't get past it if you can't see the way forward. A coach can
Yeah.
help you, can provide an objective perspective as to, here are things to consider. Here's where you're doing this or that, and here's something you may want to change or think through. And they're giving you solutions and opportunities to work through things on your own that you may not have encountered. And I'll just say, even from a career coaching standpoint, there are even careers that I've been able to share with folks. They're like, oh, I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't even know that was a career.
Yeah.
So there are possibilities that a coach can provide to you that you may not be able to see on your own. And that's just a few of the benefits, but it's getting someone with the expertise and the experience who can really guide that process for you.
Yes, and not all coaches are created equal. Like, you're in the space of coaching specifically around career progression, career development. And do you focus on early career, mid-career, or all different levels and tiers?
So my main focus is mid to senior level leaders. So I
Mid
do
to
have
senior
early
level
career.
leaders.
Yes. So I do have folks who are early career, but the majority of the folks are mid career to senior leaders. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. So we will make sure that we place your, I think it's already in the chat, but like your website and all the ways that people can connect with you in case they're interested in learning more about your coaching services. So we have 5 minutes left, and I want to leave you the opportunity to socialize around any news that's coming up for you that you feel really energized around, that we haven't been able to talk about today, that you feel would be of value to this community. What would you like to share?
So I'm really excited we talked about the event on the 9th and the one on the 15th. I'm also going to be on a sports related conversation with Monique AJ Smith on May 8th. And so her podcast is a chat in the garden. And so I'll be able to share that link once that's live as well. But being able to talk about women in sports and women in their careers. And so being able to have a good conversation about that as well. And then I've just also will continue to share some of the upcoming speaking engagements that I have. I have a few, one for the local urban league in Houston, where we're doing professional development. And also I have an engagement that will be in California as well. So I've got a lot of speaking engagements that are coming up that I'm just really energized about. And also I will be restarting my LinkedIn Live series, Talks with Julia. I will be restarting that the week of May 13th. And so to be on the lookout for that, I usually will be interviewing professionals who are, whether in talent acquisition, job search, recruiters and so forth, or folks who are hiring individuals, so hiring managers from various organizations. I'll be sharing that as having those folks on the line as well. So hopefully you guys will be able to join some of those conversations and to provide some comments and questions as we all try to advance in our careers.
Fantastic. We try to share as much of that as possible into the chat section. So I hope that you all are going to take notice of that. Now I'm intrigued. So I'm gonna squeeze this question in for you too. And these are your words, not mine. For those who may have joined late, you said I trip over air, but you seem to have a lot of like sports and athletes kind of in the work that you do. Is that just coincidental, or how did that come about? I'm so curious.
No, of course. So actually, so I was coaching a corporate professional, and her brother was a professional athlete who was
I
returning from overseas.
see.
And she's like, "Hey,
Okay.
can you help my brother?" And I was like, "I've never coached an athlete before, but we're gonna give it a go." And so he was able to get a job after that. But that also caused me to reflect and say, he's not the only one who's in this space.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
I kind of just picked it up from there to say, how can I help athletes who don't have LeBron or Steph Curry endorsements, who need to go get a job? How can I
Right.
truly enable them and provide them with the skills and expertise that they need? And so that's really how I found how I got into it. Like I said, I have no sports ability whatsoever.
Well, thank you for satisfying that curiosity. Julia, we have really enjoyed this time with you. Thanks so much for sharing with our community. And we are going to stay closely connected to all of the resources that you've shared. We'll have to maybe invite you back in the future to talk more about what's going on with you at that time. I want to also thank each of you for joining us this Friday. I hope that you found this to be valuable. If so, please share it out once the link is available. Let others know that can also catch it on podcast, anywhere they like to get their podcast content. And we hope to see you back here next Friday for another episode of Intentional Conversations VodCast. Be safe this weekend. Thank you all so very much.
Take care.